Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Aliens vs. Predator for PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. Now, I was a fan of AVP, well, I guess it's AVP 2000 Classic Edition now, or whatever they've called it. But, I basically call it AVP 1999, because that's basically when it was released. But, that's basically what started me on this series, and I also had AVP on the Jaguar, which I really didn't get into until later on, so that didn't really affect me that much. But then I got AVP 2, and that really got me hooked. So when I heard about AVP 3, basically, even though it's not considered AVP 3, and the fact that it was being made by the same guys who made AVP 1999, I was pumped, because they made one of the most atmospheric first-person shooters that I've ever played. Because if you've ever played AVP, then you know it just has this atmosphere about it. It really can't be described. You have to play it to understand it, especially if you're playing as the Marine. But that game was just awesome. And then they followed it up with another awesome game, and that was AVP 2. But of course, that was Monolith, so of course they did a good job with that. Then I got to this, and the demo came out, and it was multiplayer only. And I played it. I'm like, okay, this is pretty solid. They changed things up quite a bit, but then I got my hands on the full game through a Steam sale and got it for $6.80. And I came to find out that why people hate this game so much. Now, overall, the graphics presentation for AVP is just phenomenal. First off, it does support DirectX 11, so it has special effects for that. For some reason, they decided to put anti-aliasing in with the DirectX 11 stuff, so I can't really put on anti-aliasing here. But overall, the graphics are phenomenal. What you're seeing is actually the game on normal settings, and I'll get to that in a moment. But at absolutely maximum detail, this game just looks amazing. The textures are extremely well done. The shaders are great. The particle effects are phenomenal. The lighting effects are amazing as well. And the third-person animations just look great as well. The first-person animations, if you're the alien or the predator, look great, but if you're the Marine, they look really stupid. And it's mostly with the reload animations. The firing animations are usually fine, but they seem really robotic and just jerky. It's really just badly done on the Marine side. But overall, the animations are great. Now, the problem is the game doesn't let you use the graphics to their full potential. I have a system that actually meets the recommended specs, and I have to play the game with texture settings on normal. And that is because, for some reason, they decided to code it really badly, and so very high and high texture settings will actually make the game freeze up constantly. And it has like this, I guess you can call it a stuttering issue, but it's really more like it just freezes for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and then it'll basically load everything in and you keep going. But I believe if you have a really high-end system, it doesn't bother it as much. It has something to do with the VRAM, but it's what I chalk it up to is just really bad coding, and they never fixed it. So, I mean, despite having a system that meets the recommended specs, I still can't play it on max. But what I am playing it on is normal, and it still does look very good on normal. Now, unfortunately, the sound design is a really mixed bag. First off, you have the sound effects, which are phenomenal. They used a lot of them from the movies, specifically the gunfire sounds, the alien and predator noises, all that kind of stuff. It just sounds great. It feels like it's lifted straight from the movies, and you just get this really nice atmospheric feel with it. And they also lifted some of the music from the movies as well. Not a lot, but some. Particularly with the Predator, you hear that kind of drum roll thing that it does in the original Predator. It just sounds awesome and gets you souped up, I guess you can say, for the Predator campaign. But there is one thing that the game fails miserably on. I mean, it's just terrible. Voice acting. Now, they do have Lance Henriksen playing Wayland or Bishop or whatever you want to call him. He's Carl Bishop Wayland in this. And so he's basically reprising his role from the movies. And he does a really good job as Wayland. But everybody else just sucks. It's like, one of the characters in one particular point in the game, the lights get cut off because the aliens decided to cut the power to the lights and everything. And so this one Marine is sitting there and he's like, "Who turned out the lights?" And the subtitle says, like, basically, who turned out the lights, with a question mark, an exclamation point, and then another question mark. But he says it like, who turned out the lights? And it just sounds really stupid. And that's pretty much the voice acting for the whole game. I mean, it's just terrible stuff. There are a few characters here and there that don't sound horrendous, but for the most part, they just sound bad. Now, while AVP games really aren't known for their story, 2010 has a terrible one. It takes place over all 3 campaigns, so it's generally summed up as Weyland-Yutani Corporation doing its typical thing of exploring ruins, experimenting on xenomorphs, finding predator technology, and predators need to go and get the technology back, and then aliens just doing its own thing, and the Marines trying to stay alive, basically. So that's pretty much how the story goes. It's always been that way. AVP 2 got a little bit more in-depth with the storyline, and in fact, it was actually a pretty decent storyline. But AVP 99 was kind of just the stereotypical one, and 2010's stereotypical, but it's even worse because the characters are just terrible. They just irritate you to no end, because it's just like, oh my god, how much more generic could you get? Anyway, let's start with the Marine campaign. You actually sit there and play as the Marine, doing your typical stuff with your first-person shooter mechanics. You got your guns. You can hold up to 2 primary weapons or a smart gun, and you also have your pistol, which has infinite ammo, whereas all the other weapons have ammunition. So what ends up happening, early on anyway, until later on you don't get a lot of ammo, so you'll constantly end up running out of ammo and having to switch back to your pistol, which early on isn't that big of a problem, because while the pistol is pathetic, the aliens are too early on. But the further you get in the game, the harder the enemies get to kill. So you'll end up wanting your shotgun and your flamethrower, your marksman rifle thing. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but that kind of thing. And so you'll early on you'll have a lot of ammo problems, but later on you won't have any at all. And the campaign's really short. I'd estimate it's about 4 hours, maybe, at most, and that's on like hardest difficulty, because it's just this extremely short, very easy campaign. And the thing that made the Marine campaigns awesome in the previous games was you were on edge the entire time, because the Marine was the most pathetic of them all. Because you'd sit there and you'd have this little measly shoulder lamp, or you'd have night vision. And if you had night vision on, it would turn off your motion tracker. And then in AVP 2, they did the same thing, only they have flares. They actually had flares in the original game too. In AVP 2010, they decided to remove night vision altogether. So instead, you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, what's going on? And the problem is, all the places where the aliens are going to come out of are completely obvious this time around. So you'll sit there and you'll be like, okay, aliens are going to come out of there, and sure enough, there they come. Whereas in AVP 1 and 2, you didn't have that, because they'd like burst out of walls, they'd come out of nowhere, and you'd be like, where the f did you come from? And stuff like that. So, in AVP 2010, maybe it's just that I've played AVP games for a long time and just know this kind of stuff, but I never felt challenged. I never felt like I was on edge. I was just kind of like, whatever, I'm just going through doing my thing. And so then you go on to the Predator campaign, which has always been the most awesome campaign in all of the AVP games, except for the Jaguar game. But they've revamped the system to where the Predator has his wrist blades out all the time, and you can cloak without consuming any energy at all. You can also switch to your heat vision mode, and later on you get the alien vision mode, but those are the only 2 visions you get. You can't get the vision mode to see like androids and electronics and stuff anymore. And the reason they did that was because everything gives off heat now, so it makes a little more sense actually. But if you're going for the Predator, then you actually have 4 different weapons. You have your shoulder cannon, your razor disc, your combi stick, and the proximity mines. And the disc and the combi stick don't require any energy, so you end up using those a lot. and the combi stick is no longer just a spear that you can just attack things with. In fact, you have to throw it. So it's kind of awkward to use it, and I mean, you get used to it after a while, but it's like pinpoint accurate, insanely powerful, and so by the time you get it, you're just like, okay, this is awesome. But then the game ends, because the Predator campaign is really short too. Now, the one thing I didn't bother with was the Alien campaign, because I was told it's even shorter than the other two campaigns, where the other two campaigns are, let's see, 4 hours for the Marine. I think it was about 4 or 5 for the Predator, depending on different things. And then people say it's like 3 hours for the Alien. So it's really short, and besides, I don't like playing as the Alien to begin with, so I can't really say too much about it. I have played as an Alien in multiplayer, and it controls really weird. Now, I should address the melee system, where you basically, Predators and Aliens can do light and heavy attacks, and everybody can block as well. So, including the Marine, by the way, which is hilarious because apparently the Marine can block Predator wrist blades and Alien claws with his bare arms, and it does nothing to him. It's stupid. Now, I can see the Marine being able to, you know, bash things upside the head with his pulse rifle or his pistol or whatever, and just knock them off. But to block stuff, no, it makes absolutely no sense. And the melee system works like this: if you do an attack against a blocking opponent, then it bounces off, and then they can basically shred you. You also get instant kills, where you can like sneak up behind a Marine, say, with a Predator, and you can either take a trophy or just kill him. And like if you kill him, you just like slit his throat, or if you take the trophy, then you stick your wrist blade through his head and pull his head off with his spine. It's pretty gruesome, actually. Alien can do pretty much the same thing, only it's a little bit more gruesome, which is kind of weird. But anyway, yeah, this game was almost banned in Australia because of that, but eventually they said it was okay because it's clearly ridiculous. And that's the thing, it is a pretty ridiculous amount of gore, but it's to the point where you're like, okay, this is completely ridiculous. And it's one of those points where it's like, it's so gruesome that it's not, because it's outlandish. Now, I mean, the Predator movies were really gory, because they had, like, skinned people and everything, and that's been in the AVP games before, but it wasn't, like, rendered in this, such good graphics as this. I mean, really, it's pretty gruesome when you think about it. But, ultimately, the game itself is just not that good. I play AVP games mostly for the single player. Multiplayer in AVP 2010 is terrible. It relies on matchmaking. I'm not sure if it's on dedicated servers or not anymore, but it was originally on peer-to-peer, and it was terrible. Horribly laggy. The sides were relatively balanced, except for the Marine was always getting annihilated by the Predator, and the Alien has always been that way, but still. And apparently they released a patch to make it so where the Marine could no longer stand any chance whatsoever. So, anyway, I didn't really bother with multiplayer. I did play the survival mode, which is, I have a video of that on my channel, where basically you play as a Marine and you have to hold off like an endless amount of waves of aliens, and it's actually a really cool mode, and it harkens back to the old skirmish mode from AVP 99, and I actually kind of like it. But that's really the only good part of the whole game. The campaigns are terrible. Terrible. The multiplayer is awful. So overall, the game itself is just really bad. A lot of stuff just doesn't make any sense. They've nerfed things that they shouldn't have nerfed. And overall, they just didn't put a lot of effort into it as I hoped they would. And so, ultimately, while it pains me to say it, AVP 2010 is a really bad game. I give it a 1.5 out of 5, and thanks for watching.